The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lighting Controls podcast. We have a fantastic guest for you today who is a great dear friend of ours and previously been on the show as well. But before we jump into the conversation, let me take a minute to remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Academy.
And is financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes and a whole lot more. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode. We really cannot do this without your support. And as I emphasized in our previous episode, we do select our sponsors. We're not just grabbing everybody off the street and asking them to pay money for an episode. So MW Connect, who is our sponsor for this episode, high quality lighting control solution. They are an award-winning Bluetooth mesh solution for lighting controls. They partner with other groups to really provide high quality devices and software so that you can really get your project going and meeting the needs of the project and the stakeholders for that project. I really encourage you to check them out if you're unfamiliar with them, or you may know them by their previous name, McWong. They rebranded as MW Connect. So check them out, mwconnect.us, to see more. They have a whole lot of content on their website that's worth checking out, even if you are familiar with them. But let's get into the conversation. So today we have David, who is a returning guest. But David, just for those who have not seen or heard the episodes that you've been on before, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
Not a problem. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I was showing up as muted. Sorry.
Oh.
We'll fix this in post. Hi, everybody. My name is David Fox. I have been working in and around in the entertainment and architectural lighting industry for what I like to say is long enough that I can remember the days before DMX, but short enough that I still can lose the occasional "I've been in this business since" conversation and competition. For about 27 years, I spent a bunch of years as an installer, field service manager, programmer. Then for about 27 years, I worked for ETC. I was in charge of their technical support departments, their customer service departments, and then ultimately training and documentation, building their online learning portal, and creating all of the training for their authorized service providers. In September, I decided it was time to head off on a new adventure and am seeking different fun experiences under a new company. Wingman Technical and Creative is the company that I formed, where I'm doing some freelance consulting and ghostwriting, and in general, finding some new and interesting paths. So that's a bit about me in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's great, and thank you for coming back on the show, and congratulations on the new venture.
Thanks. New
As
adventures
a
are fun.
yes, as a company owner myself, it is always an interesting experience going from being gainfully employed to being on your own and trying to operate in this environment, which has a very weird way of approaching lighting controls.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that I tend to get asked a lot is for troubleshooting assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy thing to do to assist somebody. Like, you can troubleshoot stuff yourself very
Mm-hmm.
easily, but to help somebody else navigate troubleshooting something, like, just for a fun little add to this, last night I got a phone call from my mom who is down in the West Indies dealing with a router that doesn't work on the internet and trying
That
to
happens
help
every
her.
day, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and trying to help her figure out how to ensure that the plug is secure in and snug in the RJ45 port, and that was just an experience in itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, but so talking through, part of what we do as lighting control specialists is try to communicate to people who have no idea what they're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them understand at least enough so that they can find the solution to the problem they're engaging with. So, From your perspective, what's the best way to approach that?
That's a great question, and I agree with you. It's one of troubleshooting can fall into a number of different categories, and I think one of the pitfalls that most people fall into when they think about troubleshooting or problem solving is what they're looking for is a direct solution
Mm.
as opposed to discovering a solution. And this was something that I picked up and started learning long before I was made a career out of this, and I ultimately started building the career out of it, which is that troubleshooting is not necessarily a full range of product knowledge. I mean, that's important and it's useful, right? You needed to know how that router worked in order to be able to support
Hmm.
and help your mom. But at the same time, knowing how to identify a problem and knowing how to break down what you're hearing, that is the hard part. And when I say it's the hard part, it's because it's a thing we all inherently know how to do
Yes.
and immediately forget the moment we are confronted with a problem or a stressful situation.
Right.
Right. I mean, the example that I used to teach this class, I've taught it for years on troubleshooting technique is what I like to think of it as, right? Not necessarily answers to a
Mm.
problem, but the techniques of finding those answers and getting yourself set up. The example that I liked to use was because often I was the example that I like to use is people troubleshoot every day and they don't think about it, right? You are in a new space, you're in a new hotel room, you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you need to use the bathroom. You are in troubleshooting mode, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
everything that you're familiar with is in a different place. Which side of the bed am I on? Where's the light switches? Which side of the room is the bathroom in? Where's the light switch for the bathroom? All of these different things. You go into troubleshooting mode and you don't even think about it. And it becomes kind of this subconscious thing. And those are the things that people forget. Those are the skill sets that you forget you have when someone calls you and says, none of the lights are working and
Hmm.
we need to have the system up and running immediately, or help, my router's gone down, or it's 11:50 p.m. on New Year's Eve, we're sitting on top of a building and we can't make the ball drop. We need a solution right this minute. And that's when everybody's brain just goes poof and everything jumps to the side, right? And you're like, well, I don't know. I'm gonna run around in circles and do a bunch of different things. And that's when I talked about soft skills and when I started teaching this class about soft skills. That's where I really wanted. That's where I try to help people focus back to these tips. And I'm happy to walk through kind of what my top 8 are in terms
Mm.
of walking through it is because these are the things that as soon as I say them, and everybody that's listening to the podcast, if you're on the edge of your seat, like, oh my gosh, he's going to give me the keys to the answers. I'm going to say all these things, and you're going to be like, well, yeah, that all sounds really easy, but I cannot stress this enough. These are the things that jump out of everybody's head the minute
Yeah.
they're actually confronted with
Right.
solving a problem. And so, the first one really is to organize.
Mm.
Get yourself organized. You've been confronted with a thing. Someone has given you a problem, and I'll talk more about the differences between a symptom and an actual problem
Mm.
because those are
Mm-hmm.
really fuzzy at times.
Yep.
But before you even jump into providing anything, right? Get yourself set up and organized. Organize your thought process. Make sure you have your tools handy. All these different kinds of things. Get yourself set up and ready to go. Something that I used to stress to coworkers and when I was managing technical support, something that I told them all of the time is make the customer or the person who's coming to you part of the solution and not part of the problem. And this is that falls into a number of different categories, right? You had there were I'll pick on you for a moment, Webster. There were a lot of ways you could have approached that problem with your mom
Right.
when you were talking to her. And one of the things that can get really easy to do is to talk down to people without
Hmm.
realizing that you're doing it. We're technical people. We work in a technical industry.
Yep.
We have an expectation that everybody that's touching every lighting system that exists on the planet
Mm-hmm.
knows everything about that lighting system. And it's an easy assumption to make because that's what we deal with all day long, right? We're installing these, we understand the technical pieces of it, but most of the reality is most people don't, and the people that are calling you because they don't understand how things work, or they're having a problem, are looking to you for help, and you can
Mm-hmm.
either make them a partner in solving it, or you can make them an enemy, and now you have two problems to solve,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because now you're fighting with them. You're fighting with the person who wants your help, and that is always a difficult situation to find yourself in.
Right.
One of the phrases that I used a lot, especially when I'm doing stuff over the phone, is I need you to be my eyes and hands.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you've now clarified exactly how you're establishing this relationship and what you're capable of doing and what you aren't. So you're empowering the person with the problem to be part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to do these things. Be my eyes, be my hands.
Yep.
Or something I'll also say, because again, we live in a world of technology and initials and acronyms and
Yeah.
all kinds of different pieces. Is and sometimes you have to be really careful about either talking over someone's head
Yeah.
and making them feel stupid, or talking under somebody's level of technology and making them think that you think they're stupid. So one of the things I would often say, and I recommend other people say as well in these scenarios, is I don't know what you know. I'm going to start explaining something, but if I'm talking about this at too low of a level or at too high of a level, you need to tell me. And
Mm.
let's rephrase this conversation, right?
Yep.
So, I could start by saying, okay, I need you to go look on the back of the router, and I need you to check where the RJ45 is plugged into and what port it's connected to. And either they get that, or it gets really quiet on the other end of the phone. And it's like, okay, let's back up. What are you looking
Yep.
at?
Right.
What's in
Yep.
your hand right now? Tell me what
Yep.
you see on the back of this box. Those kinds of things. So, getting that down, and really making people part of the solution. The next thing, and again, and some of these they come off really simple, but they're really important, is to clarify the issues.
Mm.
Clarify, separating symptom from problem is a
Yes.
really, really big thing to fix, right? The lights are flickering and flashing is what someone will tell you. I'm pushing the button and it's not working. I can't get lights to go, right? These are all symptoms. They're not problems. And if you start trying to solve the symptom as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to solving the problem, you can spend a whole lot of time doing a
Yes.
lot of things without actually fixing something,
Well, it's
right?
it's like with medicine, you know.
Right.
Okay, my head hurts. Take some Tylenol. That fixes a symptom, but is the headache the result of having the flu or something like
Right,
that?
Right.
right,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
My head hurts. I haven't slept in 2 days, and I don't drink water because why would you, right?
Right.
But my head really hurts all the time. It's like, okay,
Maybe hydrate.
maybe
Yeah.
hydrate, right? Separate the symptoms from the problem.
Right.
The
Yep.
other thing that often I remind people of, and this is something that we all run into, is the person who's coming to you asking for help may or may not be the person who actually encountered the problem, right?
Right.
And this
Yes.
becomes, from in an entertainment, and some of this comes from something, and I think I might have said this in a previous podcast, but it's worth repeating, right? Is if you're coming to this from a background in entertainment lighting, and I know a lot of your audience is, and I know the three of us are coming from that area,
Right.
right? Is into a world of architectural and commercial lighting. Part of the thing to recognize is that the customer that you're working with has changed, right? And I saw this massively when I was working in technical support, which was early on when all I was dealing with was entertainment lighting problems. The person that you were talking to owned their facility, and when they had a problem, they had a phone in one hand and a tool bag in the other, and they were
Mm-hmm.
committed to spending all day. They brought their lunch, and they were ready to spend as much time as
Right.
needed to solve the problem. And then as more architectural, and as we started doing more architectural in our line of work, that customer changed to somebody who had a phone in one hand and a key ring in the other,
Right.
And they would use the phone to call you, and the key ring to open up the room where the problem existed. And that was where they were ready to go to start troubleshooting. And
Right.
maybe that answer was going to be, I'm willing to spend some time doing this. And maybe that answer was going to be, okay, I've opened the door, now send somebody. Right.
Yep.
So that opens up a completely different level of what's going on. And that person has no idea what the problem was and can't
Right.
articulate it other than it
Yep.
doesn't work. And today's larger systems, we look at a different scenario, which is you've got someone who's received an email from the person that had the keys that talked to the person that saw the problem, and now they're
Yep.
calling you. So, clarifying the issues is, who saw the problem, and talk to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Get through the 3 layers of infrastructure to actually talk to the person that saw the problem, because the lights in the ballroom didn't turn on is what is being reported in the email. But what actually happened was the janitor walked in and went to push the button on the station, and it fell off the wall. And that's what needs to get fixed. Okay,
Yep.
let's
Yep.
clarify the problem, right?
And I'm just curious, having experienced this side of the world of customer support and being on that other end of the phone call, what are the most common symptoms that you heard, but weren't really the issue, even though it was like, no, this is the problem. Like, I'm certain this is the problem. And you're like, whoa, no, like, dial it back.
The number one symptom that everyone is convinced is a problem, and again, this is it's a simple one, but it's top of the list, is the light won't turn on,
Yep.
or the light won't turn off, and that's where it starts.
Right. The light fixture is probably not the problem in that situation.
Exactly. The way I like to refer to it is, I can't make lights go.
Right.
And okay, well, that's definitely a problem, right?
Yep.
That's definitely a thing, but what does make lights go mean? And
Right.
what do you mean by I can't make lights go? Is it that the button isn't working? Is it that the light isn't turning on even though the button is working? What exactly are we talking about here when something won't turn on or won't turn off?
And it's tough. Those symptoms can be so, right? Like, I had that call today, this morning. It was an administrator who called, not the technician who was actively working on the problem, an administrator. And I got the I'm going to say it just because it happens. This is the answer this is the one we get the most. We get the phone call and they say, my ETC isn't working.
Oh, yeah, all the time. Okay. My ETC
now
is
I have
broken.
Now I have to figure out where to start. Like, what is the first question I now have to ask to even try to begin to understand where the real problem is, right? So, and that was literally this morning's call. Help, my ETC isn't working. Okay. What exactly isn't happening right now?
Exactly. Describe for me what you did, right? That's one of the times where I'll start asking some questions, right? And which ties into the next 2 pieces, right? Part of clarifying the issues, and this ties in bigly, especially with more architectural systems, and as we're moving more and more into code compliant and automatically controlled systems.
Yes.
Is one of the big things that I always ask is, has it ever worked? And what is it supposed to do? Because sometimes what people perceive as a problem isn't a problem, right? I'm walking into the room and the lights are turning off all the time. Well, yeah, there's an occupancy sensor and they're going to do that. And maybe the lights were stuck on because the system reset and the occupancy sensor didn't reset itself, and you walked into the room, which now triggered the occupancy sensor to reset, and then you walked back out and the lights turned off. So now you have this weird problem where sometimes the lights don't turn off correctly. But that's not the actual problem, right? The problem is something happened that caused this. So, that's one part of it. But the other thing is, has it ever worked? And one of the things that surprises me often when I ask that question is how many people answer it by saying no, right? We've had this facility. We've been in this facility for 3 years. These buttons have never worked right. They clearly must be broken. Let's fix it.
Well,
and coming at it from it's never worked correctly is a totally different set of problems to solve, right?
Yep.
Well, and I think that that actually emphasizes something that, while in the entertainment world isn't a common thing, in the architectural world, buildings may function for years without addressing an issue that
Mm-hmm.
should have been
Yes.
addressed on day one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And part of that is because of the fact that you don't have people who are like, I'm going to figure this out. But the other thing
Yes.
is that lighting controls is just one piece of a massive equation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and it's not even a big piece, it's a very small piece in a lot of people's worlds. Whereas in entertainment, it's the opposite. Like, if you don't have the lights
Yeah.
on, then you don't have a show.
Yep.
Right. The things people are willing to accept as normal or okay is a wide scale, right?
Yeah.
Until
Yes.
somebody decides it's super important, right? Well, I mean, one of the things that I can think of off the top of my head, because it happened a few times, were time clocks that weren't set correctly.
Hmm.
And for 3 years, nobody cared that the lights in the lobby turned
Or
off an
probably
hour
even
earlier
noticed.
than they were supposed to, right? Or they
Right.
noticed, but that was just like, okay,
Right.
well, that just happened, and we'll just go manually turn them on, and then we'll turn them off again later when we need to.
Right.
Um, until somebody new shows up and is like, well, wait a minute, that's not supposed to work like that, and let's
Yep.
go in and fix it. And you get the phone call saying the lights in the lobby are turning off too early. And it's easy to assume, okay, well, I turned this building on and it's been there for 3 years, and clearly this is a new thing. But asking that question, right? Has it ever worked? Looking for the obvious things. Oh yeah, no, it's been like this ever since you left. Well, it might not have been you, but we'll go with
Right.
the universal you, right? It's been like this ever since you left, and it's like that. It's like, okay, well, that's a different thing, right? Let's
Mm.
solve it that way, right? Looking for the obvious is another big one. This is something that I stress often, and two of my biggest mentors in troubleshooting, and I got to give shout outs to both of them, were David North from ETC and Steve Terry, both from ETC and in his time at Production Arts prior to that. Exceptionally brilliant people with amazing troubleshooting skills, and they both said something very similar to don't to that I distilled down to look for the obvious, which was David North's answer was Occam's razor always, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look for the simple solutions, and
Yep.
and Steve Terry being Steve Terry had a much more flowery way of explaining it, which I also use as well, which is when you hear hoofbeats, don't expect zebras, right? And it's and so it's like, look for the obvious things first. And this is the
Right.
one thing that people have a tendency to forget when they start troubleshooting problems. Lighting systems are complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing that we are doing as an industry that is making them simpler.
Mhm.
That's a whole other podcast, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yep. Yep.
But the reality is 9 times out of 10, when you have a problem, it's
Yes.
probably a simple thing as opposed to something super complicated, right? Look for
Turn
the
it off
obvious
and
things.
turn it back on.
Turn it off and turn it back on, right? And does that solve the problem? And I always caution people with that a little bit, right? So turn it off and turn it back on is one way to look at it. But if that solves the problem, great. If the problem comes back, turning it on and off again is
Right.
the way
Yes.
to keep going with it,
Band-Aid.
right?
Yeah.
Change
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is one of my other tenets here, if you will, is change one thing at a time, and change it only once. Right.
Yeah.
One of the stories that I used to tell in class that I'll tell here is back in the day, I was on doing technical support, and one of the things ETC offers, as you all know, is 24-hour support on an emergency pager. And everybody in phone support takes it in turn to be on that call and to take those calls. So phone goes off 3 o'clock in the morning. I pick it up. I call the person back. They said they were having some problems, and the person on the other end of the phone, who shall remain nameless, says, "Oh, David, I'm so glad it's you. I know you can help me solve this problem." I'm like, "Okay, well, no pressure there." And they said, I need you to help me. I'm in the middle of, I don't even remember what town, but I need you to help me figure out where I can get additional fuses for my sensor CEM, because I don't have any more. And I'm like, "Okay, well, what do you mean you don't have any more?" And they said, "Well, I carry 5 in my kit. And I got here and the fuse was blown. So I replaced the fuse and it blew.
Oh boy.
And then I replaced the fuse and it blew.
Oh boy.
and then I replaced the fuse. You see where I'm going with this, right? And now I'm out of fuses. And he's like, "What do you think I should do?" And my first answer was, "Stop replacing fuses." Right? There's a different problem here, right? Look for the obvious things. Change it one time. If the fuse blows a second time, it's not that you have a bad batch of fuses, right?
Yep.
There's another issue. And it turned out that there was a short in two wires to the sensor backup station that were shorting against each other in a piece of conduit. And that's why we were running into the problem, right? And then that kind of broke us through figuring out what was going on. But yeah, looking for the obvious. The other thing I tell people often, especially in more complicated systems, is divide and conquer,
Yes.
right? If you walk in and the lights aren't working, and you walk into the room and you push the button on the station and you don't see what you're expecting, so you walk into the dimmer room and you reset everything, and then you go up to the light and you unplug it and you plug it back in and it works. What did you fix?
Yep.
No idea.
Yeah.
Right? So when the problem comes back, what do you need to go touch? No idea.
Right.
Right. But the other part of it is, go ahead.
Well, I think the other thing that's really interesting about your fuse story is that that's a safety mechanism. And while the fix could have also been, and I'm not recommending anybody ever consider this as a fix, they could have just bypassed the fuse.
Yep. Yep.
And that is a very common fix.
Yep.
Not just in lighting controls, but in any complex system. I was actually watching an interesting YouTube video recently on an escalator disaster that happened because they had bypassed all of the safety mechanisms that were triggering regularly. And instead of fixing the issue, which was that the motor was going bad or something, they just bypassed the safety mechanisms, and so they had a huge systemic failure, and this disaster happened. Never bypass a safety mechanism.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of what you think the problem is, never
Yes.
bypass a fuse or anything else that's designed for safety purposes.
Yeah, great
Yes.
rule to follow, right? The fuse is there for a reason, right?
Yes.
The fail
Yes.
safe is there for a reason. The heat chain is there. All these things
Yes.
are put in place specifically to prevent issues. Don't walk into the theater and say, "Oh, well, it's not dark enough, so let's just mask over all the emergency bug eye lights because
Yep.
we
Yep.
don't want to hurt the shot."
Yep.
Right? Everybody who's ever worked in the film industry or the television industry, you're all nodding right now, and I'm not going to say anymore because we're being recorded. But you're absolutely right. Right? Be aware that safety issues are there, right? As I was supporting the issue, my answer wasn't, well, let's go. What kind of gum do you have in your pocket, and what's the wrapper look like? Let's fix this fuse issue. It was okay. We need to figure out why these fuses are blowing.
Yes.
Right? Something is happening that is causing this problem, and it is there is an obvious solution here that we have passed over, right? And that's a big thing to look at. One of the things Steve Terry used to talk about, and it sticks in my head a lot because this, I think, ties into exactly what this person ran into and fits in well here, is the French have a great term, which I'm going to butcher horribly because I don't speak French very well, which is ED fix. And that translates roughly to "it must be." And this is a philosophy that people can run into when they are troubleshooting or running into a problem, which is you develop an idea that starts to dominate in your mind as being the cause. It becomes a fixed idea or an incessant return. So you keep coming back to the same theme or scenario without actually having any proof of it. And I read about this term because I was reading an article in an airline magazine, not on an airline, but an article about airlines. I go weird places sometimes. Anyway, but they were dissecting and talking about an airplane crash, and what happened was in the course of the flight, they were the plane was in a very cloudy, foggy environment, and so they couldn't see the ground, and they couldn't see that they were relying on instruments only, and the instruments were telling them that they were plummeting towards the ground, and they were convinced it was instrument failure. And so convinced it was instrument failure that they spent the entire time that they could have saved themselves and everybody on the plane trying to fix the instruments, as opposed to trying to solve the problem of we are plummeting towards the ground.
Right.
because they were convinced that it was not that was the problem they needed to solve.
Mhm.
And that's an easy path to fall into, right? You is to get stuck in this rut or this ED fix of it's got to be the fuse, right?
Mhm.
These fuses keep blowing because it's got to be the fuse,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, well, and I think that also that story really hits another point, which is really interesting, which is just because something says it's doing it, or just because it says something is a certain way, doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
But at the same time, you should always observe for yourself. You know, if they had actually looked up and seen that their craft's actually not parallel with the horizon, but actually diving,
Right.
they might have actually saved themselves in that regard too. And this does happen a lot where somebody is like, well, you know, I pushed a button and it said that it responded. And it's like, yeah, but there's a whole chain of events that needs to happen between that button and the
Yes.
response that you're looking for.
Yeah. Color changing fixtures that are turning on to the wrong color, right? But have multiple control sources. This is a big one with like
Yep.
streaming ACN or ArtNet or network
Yep.
controlled systems where you may have a show control device and a button station that are sending two pieces of conflicting information that are being interwoven into a single answer, right?
Yep.
So one says blue, one says red, light turns purple. The problem is my light's turning on the wrong color. It's got to be something in the light. Let's go reset the fixture. Oh, it's still purple. Let's call the manufacturer because clearly their fixture's broken,
Yep. Yep.
right? It's
Ugh.
but again, these are the things that fall out of people's heads when they go to troubleshoot, right? It's just you have to sometimes just take a minute. One of a story that I used to tell in class and a piece of advice I give, and somebody actually mentioned this to me a couple of weeks ago when they were calling me because they were like, "Hey, I solved this problem and I wanted to share it with you because people tell me about it." Is one of
Nice.
the things that I used to say. I used to smoke. I don't smoke anymore.
Mhm.
But I would use that as an excuse when confronted with problems where I needed time to think to say,
Mm.
"Hey, it's been a long day. I need to walk outside. I'm going to grab a cigarette." Right. And really, it wasn't that I needed to smoke that instant, but it was that I wanted to clear my head and move
Yep.
away from things and give myself some thinking space. Right. So if you're a smoker, that's a great way to kind of clear your mind and get yourself recentered. If you're not a smoker, for 15 minutes, go be a virtual smoker.
Right.
Right. If you have people that are following you because you've developed this train of people that are invested in you solving their problem, then that's the point where rather than walking outside to have the virtual cigarette, I'll be walking towards a bathroom. And if they
Yep.
follow you
Yep.
into the
Yep.
bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
I had
Yep.
that happen too. Then that's when I'll typically walk into a stall, right? Because
Right.
at that point, I can reasonably create that break where if they're going to stand outside of the stall, I can kind of look at them and be like, "My friend, I'm going to need a minute here," right? But it's really giving yourself that moment, right? Because it gets really easy to get stuck in that loop and not be able to get
Mm-hmm.
yourself out of it because you're looking at the expectant customer or the ticking clock or the other things that you're trying to work your way through before you're leaving site for that day or
Mm-hmm.
any of the other things that are distracting you to just get yourself get your head clear, right?
Right.
Get
Yeah.
yourself
Yep. Yep.
sometimes you need to reorganize, sometimes you need to back yourself up for a second
Yep.
and think about it and go out, look outside and be, hey, it's the lights, it's still bright outside, that's nice.
Mhm.
I came into I came into the space when it was daylight and it's still daylight, winning day.
Yep. Yep.
um or okay, what have I tried, what haven't I tried, right?
Yep.
Let's take a minute here to get reorganized. I thought through all of these things.
Yeah.
What did I miss? Okay,
Yep.
they said the light keeps turning purple. I don't think it's the light, right? Where
Mhm.
can I go? What can I look at instead? What's
Yep.
controlling the system? How is it supposed to work?
Yep.
How is it set up and be working through, right? Divide and conquer the system. And sometimes, it's easy to look at that, right? In a lot of systems, you have a button that's or a tactile thing that somebody's touching. You
Mm-hmm.
have a thing that's regulating the power and the data, and then you have the actual thing that light's coming out of. Right. So when you divide and conquer the system, what I tell
Mhm.
people is start with either start your troubleshooting by suspecting the parts people touch first.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're trying to figure out which pieces of that to attack and look at, take the lazy approach and go to the one that's easiest to reach, right? If you walk in and the lights aren't turning on correctly, the first thing to do is look at the things people touch, as opposed to saying,
Yep.
okay, I can't fix this until we rent scaffolding so I can get up to the light in the ceiling, right? That may not be where the problem is, right? If I
Right.
can't get into the locked door where the dimmer room is, there's
Yep.
other things that I can troubleshoot while somebody goes and solves the problem of finding the missing key. So look for those pieces and put that together.
Yeah. And I think
Go ahead.
it's so easy. It's not easy. I feel like it's easy because it feels easy because we're talking about it like it's easy. But I think what a lot of people may not, if you've never been on the tech support end of something where you don't know the system, you can't see the system, and you're dealing with someone who may or may not be in a panic, troubleshooting is not an easy skill, right? It is truly an art, and not everybody can do it. So we may talk about it like it's easy, but it's not, and it is not for everybody. This is why not everybody does technical support, right? Like this is
Absolutely.
not calling Comcast and getting your support where they're reading a script, right? This is very, very different.
Right.
And there's only so much, like we can go through the steps, but there's only so much you can teach. I think this is one of those skills where you're either really good at it or you're not. You can fall in between, right? But you're either really good at it or you're not. It is really
Right.
tech support can be a very complicated thing, and it's we may use the same components on every system, but every system is different, and that's where this gets so complicated.
Absolutely. And I think to expand on that, you can be really good and really bad at it at the same time, right? If it's a lighting system or if it's a computer system, I'm really good at it. When my car won't start, I suck. And
Fair.
and I know all the things that I can follow every single one of these steps that I've been talking about, but I don't know enough about, I still can't make the car work, right? I don't know what I need to do. So you can be both of those at the same time, but keeping the mindset and being able to think through it comes to the next piece in my list here, and I'm glad you brought it up, which is to ask for help, right? Always ask for help. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how many years you've been doing this. You could have been the one that designed the system, specified the system, installed the system, configured the system, touches the system every single day. That doesn't mean you don't need to ask for help, right? You're going to hit a theoretical and realistic limit of what you know or what you understand. And when you hit that point, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call. And reach out to get the assistance that you need, because there's somebody out there that knows more than you do, and that's a hard pill for a lot of people in our industry to swallow sometimes. Is there somebody that knows more than you do, or you have to also accept within that, when you call and ask for help, that there needs to be a certain degree of grace and patience that you need to offer to the person that you are reaching out to, right? We've all run into this scenario. Somebody calls you stressed and angry and frustrated because they've spent 7 hours trying to solve the problem before they finally picked up the phone to call you.
Yep.
And you're there, right? And you're trying to make them part of the solution and not part of the problem. And what's the first thing that you ask, right? Is it plugged in and is it turned on? And you can feel the flames shooting out of the phone at you as you ask that question, right? Because suddenly they've become like the world. They're frustrated, right? And that's not because you think they're dumb. And it becomes a scenario to work through, right? One of the things that I always ask in that question, especially if I can tell somebody is stressed, is I won't ask them, is it plugged in? I will ask them, what is it plugged into? And that is a much gentler way that gives everybody a decent exit strategy, right? Because either they can tell you what it's plugged into, or it's not plugged in at all. But that's
but it also answers multiple questions in one go, because
yes.
most lighting control systems devices are not connected to just one other device.
Right.
And so, yeah, okay, if it's power, sure, you're only getting power from one source. But, kind of there is a chain. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, what is the strip of tape light plugged into? Oh, it's plugged
Mm-hmm.
into the driver. Great. What's the driver plugged into? And you can kind of follow that chain.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Where is it plugged in? What is it plugged into? The number of times that I ran into lighting control consoles where people had simply plugged the DMX into the wrong port,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? Super easy to solve, right? Same thing with switches and routers these days.
Yep.
Is some
Yep.
switches and routers, every single port does the same thing, and some of them it absolutely doesn't.
Right.
And sometimes the manufacturers are kind enough to actually note that on the numbering on the back or put a symbol, and sometimes they aren't, right? But I ran circles around dealing with a switch at one point because somebody had plugged into the link port as opposed to one of the actual output ports on the switch.
Yep.
So the system wasn't working because no data comes out of that port, right? That port's designed to be plugged into something else, and asking what it's plugged into as opposed to is it plugged in helps
Yeah.
solve some of that problem. But again, when you're the one asking for help, and I'll say this to all of us because we all end up having to call someone and ask for help, is
Yep.
give that patience, right? Because you've been working on the problem for 7 hours. The person you're talking to is 30 seconds old in the scenario, right? They are
Yes.
100% in catch-up mode.
Yep.
And in a lot of ways, if they can't solve it in the first minute, that's probably a good thing because it means it justifies the 7 hours that you've spent running in circles before you reached a point where you needed to call someone.
But I think the other thing here that maybe people don't acknowledge is what is the timeline that is realistic and
Mm-hmm.
expected? Because some people think this needs to be done right now, and there's
Yes. Yes.
0 hour show's gonna go, and in that
Right.
case, it's like, yeah, okay, fine, like this needs to be done now.
Yeah.
But in most cases with architectural systems, like this has been going on for years. Why does it need to be fixed immediately?
Exactly. Two
Yeah.
two questions I always try to ask, and I always advise people to ask again, making people part of the solution and not part of the problem, and clarifying, which is when did it work last, and when does it need to work again? Because
Mm-hmm.
that lets you establish the time frame and the tone of the conversation that you need to have around it,
Right.
Yep.
right? Again, it's never worked. It worked
Yep.
yesterday.
Yep.
Everything was working fine until the storm last night. You sometimes you get some good clues about what is or isn't working. It's like, wait a minute, back up. Let's talk about the storm last night. Oh yeah, the building got struck by lightning, and okay, we're solving. Now I know what problem we're solving. Right
Yep.
now I have a whole new symptom set to be looking at. Right.
But I think
Or
that's the other thing about bringing somebody else into this conversation is because they may actually ask questions that are at the root the exact same question that you've asked, but they've
Yeah.
worded it in a way that just clicks in the person's head in a
Mhm.
better way. And they go,
Yep.
oh, like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to the doctor's office and the doctor asks me like the most routine questions. And then just one day, a nurse practitioner comes in and asks pretty much the same question, but just worded differently. And it's like, oh, are you trying to find information about this?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I often will start a conversation when someone's asking me for help by saying, okay, I'm gonna start by asking you a bunch of dumb questions, and then we're gonna get to some smart questions. Right? Is it turned on?
Yep. Yep.
Right.
Let's work our way through some of these pieces, and but also getting that idea of when does it need to work next. Really gives you that establishable timeline. Because if they're saying, oh well, yeah, it doesn't work, but we don't really need this working for a week.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
let's
Yes.
take a breath here. We're going to talk about a bunch of things. I'm going to give you
Yes.
some homework, and then you're going to call me back in a couple of days.
Right.
Yep.
Right? As opposed to, am I talking to you while I'm also buying a plane ticket?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or figuring out who's the closest friend I can call who might be in
Yeah.
your vicinity, who I can owe a favor
Right.
to say, I need you to go to this site and be my eyes and hands because this person needs somebody on, need somebody there. And I mean, that's another thing for us to recognize, right, when we're in this profession, is there are times where what the customer needs is a whoopee, right? They need somebody who is physically on site, who
Yes.
is there
Yes.
to say, I'm gonna hold your hand and it's all gonna be
Mm.
okay and we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
make it work and
Right.
you didn't do anything wrong and I'm here to help, right? And and that's what they want, right?
Yep.
It isn't that they
Yep.
need the problem solved. It's that they can talk to you on the phone all day long, but what they're saying is, I need somebody to be here. And you're saying to
Yes.
yourself, you do not need me to be there. I can 100% walk you through with this on the phone. We can fix this. You can email me a copy of your configuration and I can correct this issue for why your station doesn't work. And if that's
Yes.
not the answer that they want to hear, as far as they're concerned, you're not solving the problem.
Right. Well, and that's part of just a soft skill in general that we could practice better throughout the industry, which is active listening. Actually
Mm-hmm.
listening to hear what is being said and not making an assumption about what they're saying. And so that's just it's a skill. It takes time to perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, making the assumption of like, well, no, you don't really need me there. It's like the person's telling you they need you there. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what you think. It's what they said.
Yep.
Right.
And so, okay, like find out why, but like you can't just say no. You're
Yeah.
wrong about what you think is your need.
Well, I mean, you
Right.
can say that, and
Well,
then you
sure.
don't ever have to worry about talking to them again, right?
But
I
we're
can.
almost out of time here, so
Yeah.
I wanna summarize it. I mean, this is really good stuff, especially if there's somebody out there who is interested in getting into a customer support role or
Yes.
troubleshooting, but also just in general. I mean, these are just good skills to practice with
Yes.
any scenario that you may run into with lighting controls or your life. And I mean, the very first thing is to just collect your thoughts, collect everything that you can. I mean, the first thing that I do when I get brought onto a project is ask, where's the documentation? Give me
Hmm.
whatever, you know, napkin, note, whatever. Just give me everything that you have.
Yep.
I will comb through it. I don't care, if 99% of it is mechanical stuff and 1% is what I need. I'll deal with that. But just give me
Hmm.
everything. And
Yeah.
so that's part of the process, is just collecting information.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then you can start going into the simple questions of, okay, what are you doing? How is it acting? How's it supposed to act? Fact finding is the key to answering the troubleshooting question.
I
But it's
completely agree. Yeah.
it's also about how you're engaging that person. How are you asking those questions? Because most of the time when you're troubleshooting a system, it is going to be through another person. It's
Yes.
rarely going to be because you are dealing with it and you've run into the issue. It's because somebody says, I got this email that was from this person who said this, that over there, this thing is not doing the thing that it's supposed to think. And as a result, you're dealing with whatever information you have, but engaging that person, talking to them, listening to what they're trying to convey to you. Okay, are
Mm-hmm.
you personally seeing this happen? No? Can I speak to the person who is seeing this happen?
Hmm.
That's part of the process. But as you start to whittle down into that, then you start actually identifying what the symptoms are
Yes.
and then digging into what the actual root cause of the problem is. And personally, I always challenge my assumptions whenever I start getting into that level, because it's
Hmm.
like, okay, I can assume that it's this, but that may be wrong. And as I start testing out the parameters of what's going on here, I'm going to be like, nah, maybe that's not it. Maybe it's this,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
just getting closer and closer to that answer. But again, I want to emphasize here is really important. Never bypass the safety mechanism. The safety mechanism is there
Absolutely.
for a purpose.
Yep. I
Yes.
would I would add to that one piece of
Mhm.
advice that I give people as well, which is never go past your own personal level of comfort,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
regardless of whether it's a safety mechanism or not. Right? If
Yes.
you don't, if
Yes.
you're afraid of heights, don't climb a ladder.
Yep.
If somebody's asking you to pull out a meter and start opening up boxes and putting your hands into a box and metering things, and it's low
Yep.
voltage, so it's not a question of life safety, but
Right.
it's just not something you feel comfortable doing,
Hmm.
that's a hard stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
whether
Yep.
you're the one solving the problem, or you're, or any of those other things, right? You're not bypassing safety. You're always following site safety measures. You're not bypassing fuses. If you have to
Yep.
lock out, tag out, by
Hmm.
all means, lock out, tag out. You don't have a lockout, tag out kit, hard stop.
Yep.
And if you don't know what a lockout or a tag out is, hard
Hard
stop.
stop, right? It's but don't go past your own level of comfort, because as soon as you're trying to solve a problem, or as soon as you're trying to push a customer to solving a problem that they're not comfortable solving, you're
Hmm.
not going to get a good solution.
Right.
And
Right.
I picked up on a lot of this because, again, on the phones, we never knew who was going to call, and I
Yep.
still don't always necessarily know who's going to call me for help. And oftentimes, especially in a school, the people that are first encountering the problem are kids, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and they may be the ones that are calling because kids have cell phones these days. It's crazy.
Yep.
But, so the kid may be the one who's calling you, and be aware of that, right? Before you're like, okay, well, I need you to open up that relay cabinet and start flipping these switches, right? That might
Oh
not be
my
something
God.
they're comfortable with, right? But
Yep.
you don't know that.
Right.
So it's one of those things, A, it's a gauge to check, but B, you're absolutely right in this. Do not bypass anything that is there to keep people alive,
Yep.
or to keep the system
Or
from
keep this.
exploding.
Yeah. Right. And
Right? It's
so,
the
but like the other thing there, within what you're saying also is that you need to be knowledgeable. You need to understand your systems at
Yes.
least enough to be able to understand how the system works,
Yep.
what happens when things are connected together, and how it should
Yep.
behave normally. The best technicians that I uh, work with will break out the manual every single time they work on something. Even if they've worked on that equipment, a million times before, they will still break it out and just flip to like a chart or something and be like, yeah, that's right, okay. Because, yeah, okay, you can memorize stuff all day long,
yeah.
but it's like, okay, each model number is different, and
Yep.
each, there's always going to be variances. And so being aware of where the information is, not necessarily memorizing all the information, but knowing, okay, yes, I know there's a system manual out there that I can break into, and I know somewhat how to navigate it. That is
Yep.
super handy. And every time I am assisting somebody, I'm like, okay, give me the part number. Give me
Yeah.
the piece of
100%.
information to identify it so that I can at least get a sense of where we are.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
so, go
totally
ahead.
agree. I mean, one of the things, and I'm going to read this as a quote because I have it in front of me, and I keep it because it's one of the things that David North said, and I think it ties directly back into something what you were just saying, which is you have to know what the product does, and then you have to know what it does not do, and
Hmm.
follow
Mm.
that up
Hmm.
with how products work together, and then
Mm-hmm.
what they are designed or configured to do.
Hmm.
Ask the customer what they're trying to accomplish and or what has changed since the last time the system worked. When you have
Absolutely.
time, step up to your equipment and learn it. Be prepared. This goes for knowledge and gear. Any part can fail at any time.
Mm.
And if something isn't working, start at one end and go to the other. Either define what's working or start with the dead item and work backwards.
Yep.
Look at not only what it may take to fix it, but what the customer's experience is going to be between finding the problem and finding the solution. And I always go back to that, right? Because that has nothing to do with the specifics of any one product, right? Or what it can. It's take the time and learn it. Take the time and
Mm-hmm.
understand what you're working with. And if you don't know what the pieces are when you first get the call, don't pretend,
Right.
right? Just say, okay, well, let me get some information, or let me get a copy. Send me the copy of those job prints, or I'm going to dig through our records and find, because we turned this job on. I need to pull up your records and take a look at this, or send me the configuration and I'll take a look at it and go from there.
Yeah, and I think, again, it is sort of that comfort level, and you need to kind of get a sense of where your knowledge extends to, or
Yep.
potentially can grow to within the
Mm-hmm.
time frame that you need, and really where you need that help, where you need to phone a friend
Yep.
to
Yeah.
assist
It,
in. And I call people all the time. Like I've called Ron while I was dealing with projects on a regular basis, just being like, hey, I haven't used this before. Can you help me just
Yep.
like, am I doing this right? Um, and it doesn't have to be this huge ordeal.
Mm-mm.
Right.
It
Right.
can literally just be, I just need enough information to make the next step.
Hmm.
Yep.
But knowing where your limitations are and that self awareness is really critical.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people right now feel that if they're going to be put in a position where they need to be doing support or they need to be doing troubleshooting, that it means they have to know everything about everything.
Right.
Yep.
And one of the things that I used to stress a lot at ETC, and you'll probably hear it from them if you talk to them because I said it to everybody in phone support for over 2 decades, is your job as a troubleshooter, your job as support
Mm.
is not to know the answer to every single question. It's
Hmm.
to know where to go to look for the resources to find that answer.
Yep.
And there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to call you back.
Yep.
That is a perfectly acceptable answer. Whether
Yep.
the customer likes that that's what what you're saying or not, right? You
Yes.
can still work within their time frame, right? They need it working this second. That's great. I need you to give me a minute. I need to catch
Yep.
up on this. Let's get back to it. You don't need this working for a couple of days. Fantastic. Let me crack a book and I'll call you back
Yep.
and give yourself that space to learn it so that you then can support it. And that's
Yep.
troubleshooting, right? That's it. Eventually over time, you hear enough of the same symptoms that you can diagnose what the problem is with less and
Yes.
less and less information,
Yep.
right? And that's where people are suddenly like, "Oh, I called Ron and I said lights don't work and he fixed it in 30 seconds." Right? And it's because, Ron, you've heard that problem 75 times. So you
Yep.
know exactly based on those symptoms where the problem is and how to fix it. And
Yep.
it's how do you teach somebody that? Time, right?
Yes.
Patience. You did the work to break it down to the point where now for you that's not a problem. That's a series of symptoms that have a diagnosable solution, right?
Yep.
Same thing with a doctor, right?
Yep. I, yeah, I will say the biggest thing is stay calm. Like if you're listening to this right now and you feel like you could take on the world because of David's calm demeanor and his amazing tone where he just makes us all feel warm and fuzzy, yes, that's exactly how you should act when you're on the phone with your customers. You
Hmm.
need to stay calm. You need to validate their concerns and their feelings because they are very stressed in that moment and you need to help them through that. And so there's nothing wrong with that. And like they both mentioned, do not be afraid to ask for help. That is
Hmm.
the we all do it. I do it. We
Every
all
day.
do it. And
Every
know
day.
if you're under the gun and you're on site and someone says, I need this working in a half hour, know that you set your own parameters. Okay, I've got a half hour to fix this. That doesn't mean I've got a half hour before I need to call for help. That might
Hmm.
mean I have 10 minutes or 15 minutes to try and diagnose this before realistically I need to call for help because I may get stuck on hold. So I need to
Hmm.
give myself time to then be able to like not be stuck for 15 minutes waiting on hold, right? So just know that process, work through it. I can't tell you how many times I've called ETC and sat on hold and I may have fixed the problem and the text shows, picks up the phone and I go, I'm all set, but thanks. I was just waiting on hold in case because I'm dealing with this thing, but we're good. Other times they pick up, you work through the problem together and you continue on.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's
that's a
just nice to have that second person, right? To
Hmm.
help you through, am I making the right decisions and steps right now? Because this still isn't doing what I expect.
yeah,
And
that's a
it's
good
it's
point.
important.
The last, the piece on that, and we could go into bonus rounds for this and talk as long as you want because I can talk about troubleshooting forever. Maybe that's a problem. But one of the other things to look at in some of those scenarios is, especially when people are really stressed or you have a very small amount of time and a very large problem to solve, is triage and expectation setting.
Yep.
Hmm.
Right? Like, what do I understand that this is broken, right? We all agree that this is broken. We all agree that this is that it's going to take some time to fix. What do we need to meet your immediate timeline, right?
Yep.
Hmm.
Like, can we just turn the breakers on and off in the dimmer rack to get you through your show tonight?
Yep.
Can we just Can we
Yep.
go manually force these fixtures on so that you have lights in your conference space?
Yep.
And yeah, they're not going to be at the right level. And
Right.
yes, we all understand that the walls should be prettier. But right now, you have 300 people and a very upset bride in your in your ballroom, and we need to solve that problem, and
Yes.
then we'll solve the other problems, right? So
Exactly.
let's and again, I think that part of that also falls into the don't fall so down a rabbit hole of trying to fix a thing that you
Yes.
forget about the overall scenario that you're running into, right? It is a building, it is full of people, and either the lights are not turning on or the lights are not turning off, both of which could be problems.
Yep.
But what do we need to do to get you through your immediate need so that we can then actually fix the problem that you are encountering?
Yep. Yep. I love it. David, thank you. Thank you so much. I
My
know
pleasure.
everyone got so much out of this, and I'm sure everyone feels amazing about troubleshooting right now, like they could take on the world after listening to
You
us.
can. You can take on the world. Just get organized. Just
love
get
it.
organized first.
That's it. All right. Thank you so much. I will just close us out and remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Academy.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes and a whole lot more. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode, which has phenomenal support in the US, especially. I highly recommend you check out MW Connect at mwconnect.us. They want their projects to be successful. I can guarantee you that because of the fact that they have worked on projects that, through no fault of their own or anybody else's, unforeseen consequences happened. They've fixed them by going to the site, resolving, maybe adding equipment if they needed to. We have a great conversation in one of our past episodes. I think it's a live stream actually, talking about leaves on trees getting in the way of outdoor signal. And it's just one of those things where you don't know until you know. And so they fixed the problem. They came out to the site and found the solution and helped make sure that that project was successful at the end of the day. So I can't recommend them enough. Check them out, mwconnect.us. But thank you for joining us. And David, thank you. This was an awesome conversation.